Greetings. Welcome to another edition of the Black Sheep Project. I am your host, Stephen Walker, and I am so excited to be with you all once again tonight. Y'all, we have been going strong for the past 3 weeks, and so I hope you all are ready to experience what we are going to bring tonight. I have a brother here who I know who is excited to be with you all tonight. You may know him, you may not know him, but one thing that I can say is that you will know his story. And so, as you do know, the past 2 weeks we have had, some special guests, special ladies. The first episode was none other than Faith McKinnon, and then also a dear friend, Jamaica Kelly. And so, if you haven't seen those episodes, go ahead and go to my YouTube channel, The Black Sheep Project TV, or you can go to my Facebook, Stephen Walker, and you can go ahead and check out the past 2 episodes. And so I hope that you are already being impacted. Go ahead and share this episode with somebody. Please comment, share it. And go ahead and engage with the guests that I have coming on tonight. So I don't want to belabor the hour. I want to go ahead and bring them on. And so this brother right here hails from the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina, the 704. I've known him for a few years now, and he is definitely somebody who I could definitely say that is loyal, someone who will always have your back, and someone who is down to earth. I want to welcome to the stage or to the screen, Brother Elijah Lewis.
Good evening, my brother. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Elijah. How are you doing?
Hey, man, I cannot complain. If I did complain, you would help me. I'm doing good, man.
Wonderful. I'm glad to have you on tonight. We are 3 weeks strong, and I remember you was helping me out last semester with a smaller project I was working on, and to have you here on this official podcast, the Black Sheep Project, I am honored to have you here, sir. So once again, thank you.
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to see that you are still going strong, keeping the work going forth and continuing on with what you're doing. So keep doing what you're doing, for sure.
We can't stop, sir. We can't stop. So I want to go ahead and get into this interview. You are a young man who has grown into this stage of his life spiritually, naturally, and also just as a man who has traveled with God and who has came from a long line of things into where you are at now. And so I want to just, first just ask you, can you give the audience, some background of just your story and how you were raised, and how have those things made you into the man that you are today?
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'll take it all the way back. Like you said, I am from Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where I was born and raised. But in fact, I was actually born here in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I reside currently. My mother was actually pregnant with me when she graduated from the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University. So she was a college student, travailing through her journey as a young woman at the time. And she had me, after her graduation, immediately after her graduation. She graduated in December, and I was born in January.
Wow.
So, yeah, the A&T colors are blue and gold, and they say, the blue and gold is running through my blood, So that was definitely interesting. Growing up in Charlotte, very diverse city, the largest city in North Carolina, actually. And it is, or was, and still is, I would say, a place of great diversity, a lot of great things that you can experience in terms of culture. And it was a place that really shaped me and molded me in good ways and in bad ways, I would say. I know we're talking about our journey with God and how our spirituality has grown us, but I was into a lot of crazy things, growing up as a young man and seeing and experiencing stuff with drugs and women, and even stuff you see in school, like people committing suicide, friends turning their back on you, stuff that naturally happens as you are growing as a person, whether you're white, black, rich or poor, but just stuff that I really had to pay attention to and really had to learn how to stay away from. And there were good things that I actually had to learn to attach myself to as well. I was raised in the church. My grandmother, she is a trustee at a missionary Baptist church in our home in Red Springs, North Carolina. I call it my second home. It's in rural North Carolina. A lot of people don't know what that is. You would say it's near Fayetteville because that's the closest kind of bigger town close to Red Springs. So that's kind of how I grew up in the church, praying, reading the word, having kind of if I'm being honest, kind of a surface level experience with religion and faith, but it being a staple in my life. And growing up and experiencing some of the bad things that I was talking about earlier, I had to struggle to learn what faith is and stay in my faith while coming into these new experiences of life. And that's just in my earlier years. Like we're not even talking about, college. And even now, as I've gone deeper in my faith, the challenges that I'm still experiencing. But, that's just a little bit about my upbringing, the stuff that I've experienced.
You mentioned the word challenges. And one thing that the Black Sheep Project is definitely about is about helping people to expose those challenges, to allow people to understand that those challenges are not meant to hold you back, that those challenges were not meant to keep you down, but those challenges were meant to catapult you into your new level in your life, to a new stage that God's trying to put you all on. I have my challenges, and as you have already stated, you have history, coming from, that lifestyle of drugs, coming from that lifestyle of just being in the world, as the church folks may say. And so, just about those challenges, I mean, I'm assuming it was through your high school years and whatnot. Can you describe to me what were those challenges like? And from those, what were those lessons that you have learned from since then?
Wow. The challenges, looking back, because hindsight is 2020, it was really not, it was influenced by what was going on around me on the outside, but it had a great effect. And I feel like a lot of that was deeply rooted with everything that was going on within me on the inside. I believe that going all the way back to, let's say, elementary and middle school, struggling with identity issues, not being the tallest kid in the class or the cutest kid in the class, not being the one who was always accepted by the peer group that was around me. I feel like that affected how I went into my high school career because I wanted to be accepted. I was still longing for that acceptance from people, new people that I had just met, longing for something that I had missed in my earlier years. So that allowed me to be pulled in to a lot of friend groups and a lot of circles that I probably shouldn't have been in. People that, had loving hearts and were kind and had kindred spirits with me, but people who weren't on the same path as me. I was someone who I would say, stayed focused on the academics, but I was getting attached to people who were selling drugs or who just casually did drugs. That wasn't me all the way up until I would say about my junior year of high school. I was about 16, 17. That's when I started experimenting with drugs, and that experimenting turned into, casually using smoking marijuana, the occasional popping of pills, even experimenting with psychedelics like shrooms and things like that. It just became regular because that's what was regular with the peers that I was around. And to bring the spirit back into it, I just got to take a moment to thank God, because looking back, that hindsight, it was the power, the covering of God and the power of God that actually kept me in the midst of that. Because I can sit here and say, like, even in the midst of all of my experimenting, I didn't fail any of my classes. I wasn't knocked off of the course that I had been set on by God, with the help of my parents and my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles, my upbringing. I wasn't really knocked off. And I witnessed people who I was around who either got knocked off of their path because of these same things that we were all doing, or they never even got on the path to go towards greater. I'm not saying, going to school and going to college, that's the only way. People have trades, people start their own businesses, people do a bunch of other things to be successful. But I know the path that I was on, and I'm just grateful that I wasn't knocked off of that path because of everything that I was doing. I don't think it's any credit of my own or anything that I did in the midst of it, because if you would have left it up to me, I'd be in a gutter somewhere. I would have been homeless. I would have been, abandoned and rejected by people that are close to me, and rightfully so, because I wasn't always doing everything right, but that once again, I just thank God, that I was kept on that path. And just going back to the question you asked about those challenges, I feel like the challenge of identity, finding out who I am, understanding who I was and how that shaped who I am, and not being held back by those things that I did in the past, but using that to grow and become a better person. I feel like that was the biggest challenge that I faced, in my upbringing.
And you mentioned some great stuff. There's a whole lot to chime in on. And so, just walk with me here. You had said that you were looking for an image, from, and I think a lot of guys, a lot of boys, we experienced that, in elementary school and in middle school, facing rejection or not being a part of the cool crowd, not being a part of, that circle where people feel like I'm accepted. And so, as a result of that, we go ahead and we look for the crowd that we want to be a part of. And in that, the cost of that means that you have to also do the things that crowd is also doing. And so in that, we become lost in what we are choosing. We become lost in our choices. I can definitely testify to that. I'm not gonna make this about my story. This is your story, but I can definitely sympathize with that because as a young man now, looking back at my life, I can definitely see, how people like you, people like me, and other guys have gone through, rejection in our younger years, and in that informed our choices as we got older into those teens. And so, with those things that you had to experience, now we don't always have to go through something, but our choices leads us there, and so we have to kind of deal with the route that we choose.
Yeah.
Um, how did that affect your relationship with God along the way, knowing that you picked a crowd that that you didn't feel suited for, but you also knew that you had a calling in your life, and so was there like a wrestle at any time in your teen years?
You know, yes, there was a wrestling, and you're just forcing me to reflect, which is not, it's not a hard thing, it's not a pull, but it's just so interesting to think about how I didn't even know what I was wrestling with at the time. Honestly, I was being led and guided by my own perception of right and wrong for the most part, during those times. But I don't think I fully grasped the fact that it was my convictions, even as a young man, even as a young believer, that were influencing me to one, do certain things that I know I should be doing, and two, not do certain things that I know I shouldn't be doing. You know, I I always had to draw a line, and being young, a lot of lines get crossed, but
Yes, sir.
um, once again, man, just thanking God like that there were lines because
Yeah,
I literally watched people cross lines every day. There were people around me going back to the crowd, people in these crowds that didn't have any boundaries, and I saw the effects it had on them back then. And
yeah,
even right now, knowing those same people, I can see that that same lack of boundaries has had a similar effect. It's a domino effect. And being young, you don't think about it, how it's affecting you in the moment. But here we are again, hindsight, looking back at what it was then, looking at what it is now, it
yeah,
has had an effect. And I even look at my story, and just how God kept me. And even though I didn't have God in the center, I would say I can honestly say that as a young man, God was still there. God still was in the picture. You know, in parts of what I was doing, I just had to think about, okay, God, I need your help, and I need your help. So I can't do everything that everyone else is doing. There are times when I can't even do the things that I really want to do.
yeah,
And those are things that I can remember thinking about as a young man. Now, I wasn't always obedient to those things, but
yeah,
the thoughts were there and the processing was there.
yeah,
And even who I am right now, it's processing even more. And we
yeah.
both know that's come through the mighty and great work from the ministry that we are part of, the Citadel Praise Church, and even our pastor, Reverend Greg Drumright, who has been teaching us and instructing us and helping us with this in the faith. So I just thank God for that structure I had then that has helped me to become a better man of faith today.
Um, you are already speaking some powerful things and dropping some gems for us. Now, as you look back at your story now, you are crossing over, you know, into this new light. How has it been? Sometimes reaching back for the ones still there.
Whew. I think we're right back at that word challenging, because it has been a challenge. I was just thinking about this earlier this week, thanking God for the great relationships I still have with people in my past. I'm in a group chat with, I would say, about 8 to 10 guys that I went to high school with, and we all have gone on different paths. Some people stayed in Charlotte. Some people are in Houston now. Some people are in Arizona now with the military. Two of my friends in this chat, they have children. One of them just celebrated their first birthday this Saturday, and the other one on the 11th of this month. Um, they had their second child, so he's on his second kid. We're the same age. So life has just been going, going, going for all of us. But we've kept that great connection, and I am grateful that I can be an example for them because I can tell that not to just talk bad about anybody or act holier than thou, you know, or place judgment because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just speaking
Yeah,
on my observations. I can tell that faith isn't really a staple in a lot of their lives. Just based off conversations that we have, conversations that I've tried to have with them about faith. Invitations that I've even made to them. About not just coming to my church, but finding a church where they're at, and checking up with them on that and seeing where they're at on that. I can tell it's not a lot of energy poured into,
yeah,
not just ask, but conversations as well. So reaching back, it is a challenge, but it's a journey, and I think that's what we've come on here to talk about, the journey. And I'm grateful for that journey because not just with that one friend group, but with people that I know in my family, that I'm connected to, or people that I'm meeting in new jobs and people from old jobs, just reaching back and having these conversations. I can tell that life is pushing us all a little bit closer to faith, because we all know, we both know what God means to us and how we need him in every single part of what we do. And I think that's just a part of everyone's journey, just learning how much God means to you and how much you need him in the midst of everything you're going through. And some people just get it differently. Some people just get it at different times. Some people just get it at different speeds. So I think that's one of the best parts about it.
So what made you shift? Like, what made you make the choice when you came to college? Now we all didn't come to college choosing God. We didn't come to
Mhm.
college saying, I'm coming to college to choose Christ. But you ended up finding him. Now, you never lost him, and he never lost you. But there was a
Thank you.
difference. There was a distance in that
Yeah.
relationship.
Oh
And
yes.
one thing about this narrative of the black sheep, are people who are or people who has or have journeyed from God, journeyed from their narrative or whatever is their faith background, whatever is their norm. People who have embraced a lifestyle where they haven't always fit in. Now, we as Christians don't always fit into every crowd, and so in that crowd, we could be the black sheep of that crowd, which is pretty
Mhm.
funny. I don't think we ever realized that maybe the black sheep could be the black sheep that's standing out in a crowd of people who are in the world, rather than us just journeying. You know, we are that one that God decided to run after. So if you can, give the audience some advice here, to the next young man, to the next young girl who is desiring to be accepted by their peers, but still feel like they don't have a place, what would you say to them in the context of finding themselves?
Wow. In the context of finding yourself, I would say, analyze your roots. You know, where who, how is where you've come from influence where you're at right now? If history means anything, and it means a lot, whether we believe it or not, the the everything that we are is kind of based on pieces and portions of our past. And I say analyze your roots because some of us come from good roots, some of us come from bad roots. And a lot of us attach ourselves to our roots too much. And unfortunately, we see that dynamic coming from a bad side, like, I come from a broken home and that's why I am what I am now. Or I come from an impoverished family, so that's why I am where I am now. I come from, generations and generations of people who have mental instability, or people who, might get pregnant young, just different things, different circumstances. So that's why I do the things I do, and that's why I am the way I am. And all of that may be true, but I just think we have to take the good and leave the bad.
Yeah,
We know that's where we came from, and we know that's the why, but we need to analyze the how in changing that. I believe that's where the true growth is, and that's where the true shifting will begin. Going back to your initial question, you know how what made me shift. I think what made me shift was deciding that I need to stop wasting time, and I need to stop playing around with what I know I need to do, because
mm,
there wasn't
yeah, that's
really
good.
a light bulb moment or a light bulb experience that I had, because I came to college knowing that I needed to find a church and knowing that I need to grow in my faith. I knew I was coming for school. I knew that I was coming to get a degree so that I could matriculate upward, towards getting a career level position, growing in that way. But I knew coming to North Carolina A&T in 2017 that I needed to keep going in my faith. Because, like I was telling you earlier, I always had those convictions and those conversations of, okay, God, I know what boundaries I need to have so that I can stay with you. So coming to college, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't immediate, but it was always there. And I was just approached by a young lady handing out donuts, free
Yeah,
donuts. Here's another piece of advice. If you want to influence anyone in college, free food is the key.
take it.
It's a major key. We know that very well. But yeah, so it was a donut drive going on with the Citadel of Praise Church here in Greensboro, and they were reaching out to students at A&T, and I took that donut and I took my legs and I walked on to church, and my life has been changed ever since. So going back to your second question, what advice would I give? Once again, just analyze your roots, know where you came from. If it's a good place, grow those roots. Don't shy away from the roots. A lot of people dismiss their good roots, and a lot of people on the other side, just assimilate to their bad roots, but it should be the opposite in a sense. We need to take care of the wisdom and the knowledge that was put into us by our forefathers or our mentors, our foremothers, the people that came before us. We need to take care of those roots and help it to grow us. And even the bad situations, the bad circumstances, the bad environments, we should use that and tear that down so that we can put in new roots and use that to grow as well. So that would just be, my takeaway, not just from my experiences, but what I've just learned, in life.
You are dropping a whole lot of knowledge, and I appreciate you spending time with us tonight on the Black Sheep Project. Um, as we are bringing this interview to a close, I want to ask you one last question. Um, in your journey, in your story, we have talked about the past. You talked about where you're at now, but where in your journey, what points was the most painful, and in that, how did you find healing?
Well, thinking about pain, um, it's funny. I just had yesterday, actually, I just had a kind of crazy allergic reaction to some pollen uh, that I come into contact with. I think it got on my hands and I touched my nose and my face, and so I was sneezing all day. And this doesn't usually happen. I may have an allergic reaction maybe once or twice, a handful of times. I can count on my one hand how many times I might have an allergic reaction, not just in this season, but throughout the year. Um, you can probably count on one hand how many times I get sick, how many times I might have a muscle ache, how many times I'm really down bad for real, as we would say, or incapacitated from sickness. So, and I say all that to say, firstly, thanking God for, that covering once again. Um, I say all that to say, not going through a lot of physical ailments throughout the year for most of my life, I've understood what hurt in your emotions feels like. I've understood what mental trauma looks like. I've understood what, a broken heart looks like and feels like. Um, I've seen it. I've been through it, and these are things that we go through as people, of course. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, as the word says. And I think the most painful thing I've been through, hmm, would have to be during the pandemic. So this is year 2020, 2021, 2022, real, and even some of 2023, realizing that after all this time in my life, because I graduated college in 2020, so I'm now coming out of that season, going into, as they would say, post grad adult life, finding a job, um, realizing that throughout all of that matriculation, everything that I've talked about, on this episode, that there were parts of myself that I still hadn't found. You know, there were still issues with the self identity and the lack of acceptance that I was still struggling with. And with there being less people around me, with there being less of a community around me, with there being less people and just me, in the room with just me and God, I realized like I didn't know who I was for real, and having poured so much time and energy into other things like my degree and finding a job, having poured so much energy into certain people I don't even know anymore, or people that have shown me that they weren't always for me, it made me realize that, I hadn't poured enough energy, firstly, into God, having that distance and still growing, but not doing enough, or two, understanding who I was in God, and who God wanted me to be as his son, his disciple,
Mm.
and a servant of him. I think that was the most painful part of my 26 years of life, just that time and that journey in that short time period, trying to make up time in a sense, because I'm like, okay, I haven't done this work, so let me start to put the work in. And realizing how hard it is, to break
Yeah.
down those walls, to break down those barriers, to break down the things that I was either afraid to face, or I didn't know how to face, or I didn't know that I needed to face, in the midst of my journey. That was the toughest challenge, and it is still a tough challenge as I'm growing. But I found healing in the love of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ,
My Lord.
knowing that even throughout all of that time of not taking God as seriously as I could have, God still took me seriously. That's why he loved me through it all. That's why he covered me through it all. That's why he still blessed me through it all. And that's something I didn't even realize. I didn't even analyze. A lot of times I didn't even sit with. But having shed off all of these things that I come through, and just getting to myself and looking myself in the mirror, taking a hard, deep stare at myself in the mirror, I realized that God has been the most constant thing in my life, and drawing closer to that, pulling on that, and being strengthened by just that fact alone, the love of Christ, that's where my healing was then and still is now. And I am trusting and believing in God that it will stay that way, as I am as I'm trusting God to mend my broken heart, as I'm trusting God to put together, the pieces of my mind that I haven't pulled together, just yet. As I'm building my faith and building my soul and staying rooted, to what Christ is saying and what Christ is doing in me. I have hope in my Lord, for the
Yeah.
future, because a lot of points in my life, I put hope in, you know, what degree I'm getting, or what job is coming next, or what opportunity is going forth. But all that stuff is done. It's gone now. It's completed. But there's a perfect work that God is doing in me that is working as well, and that needs to be completed, not just from God's end, but from the work that I need to do as well. So I'm just bridging the gap and standing in the gap, believing and trusting God.
Well, sir, thank you, Elijah, for sharing with us your story. We'll have to have you on again, and the next time you may have some other people alongside of you. Also, being a part of this conversation. And I want to let you know that the quote of this podcast is, "You live to tell your story, so tell it." And so continue to journey with God, continue to stay in the fight. And I know that you will continue to have success and you will continue to prosper because you didn't die. You are living to tell your story. And so thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother, for opening this platform and inviting me on, inviting everyone else that has come on. I truly appreciate it, and keep up the great work. And thank you for allowing us to be open. We need this as a people, as a faith community as well. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Amen. You all, thank you for joining us here tonight once again for another edition of the Black Sheep Project. I want to go ahead and give you just a concluding prayer to go ahead and send you off on your way. God, we thank you for what you have done for us tonight. You are so gracious, you're wonderful, you're kind, you're loving, you're sweet, you are just. And we are praying right now for the ones who are still journeying, whatever is their faith background, whatever is their background with their families, Lord. If they're a man, they're a woman, Lord, whoever it may be, if they're young, if they're old, if they're middle age, God, everybody has a story. Lord, people who are not being loved need to feel you in this moment. People who don't even know who they are need to feel you in this moment. And so right now, wherever you are, we pray that God is going to heal you, that God is going to redirect you, that you will feel peace tonight. Because you didn't die in your journey, and you will not die in your journey. You are going to make it through. And I pray that God will find you right where you are, because you are going to win this fight. And we pray all these things in the name that we do pray. Amen. Well, you all, thank you for being a part of this broadcast here tonight. I am Stephen Walker, your host of the Black Sheep Project. So continue to journey with us each and every week as we are going to bring in more guests, more stories, people who are going to, spill out all of not just things that they have went through in their pain, things they went through in their joy. And so thank you for joining us tonight on the Black Sheep.